Outsmarting begins not with strategy, but with self. It doesn't start in the battlefield of confrontation, but in the quiet chambers of the mind. Inner mastery isn't glamorous. It doesn't earn applause. No one sees you waking up earlier, choosing discipline over indulgence, silence over reaction, stillness over chaos. But that's where real dominance is built, far from eyes, deep within. When you master yourself, you become unreadable. No one can trigger you, bait you, or drag you into games. Why? Because you've outgrown the need to prove anything. That is where outsmarting truly begins, not in playing mind games with others, but in refusing to be a pawn in theirs. When you're in control of your thoughts, your emotions, your impulses, you are unshakable. You're no longer reacting, you're choosing. You're no longer chasing outcomes, you're crafting them with precision. Emotional intelligence becomes your secret weapon. While others explode, defend, justify, or seek revenge, you observe, you analyze. You conserve your energy, knowing that not every action deserves a response, and not every fire is worth your flame. It takes incredible restraint to not react when provoked. It takes even more strength to smile when you're tested, to breathe deeply instead of erupting, to walk away instead of engaging in drama. That is not weakness, it's calculated power. Inner mastery means you no longer get pulled into other people's storms because you've built a home within your own calm. You don't fear manipulation because you've trained yourself to see through it. You don't seek revenge because you realize the greatest revenge is elevation. Every time someone tries to throw you off and fails, you win. Every time you maintain composure in chaos, you win. Every time you choose grace over retaliation, you win. Those who lack self-mastery are predictable, and predictability is a weakness. If someone can press a button and get the same response from you every time, you're not in control. They are. Outsmarting isn't about being cold or distant. It's about becoming so centered, so rooted in your own sense of self, that nothing shakes you. That is how you stay 10 steps ahead. That is how you walk into any room, any confrontation, any situation with clarity, because you've done the work within. You become more focused on the long game. While others are busy scoring petty points, you're building leverage. While they're burning bridges with emotional outbursts, you're constructing alliances in silence. Mastery teaches you that real influence doesn't demand to be felt. It simply is. It flows from presence, not performance, and those who have it don't need to scream. They don't need to over-explain. Their stillness speaks for them. This kind of control isn't natural. It's trained, it's earned. You learn to master your emotions by sitting with them, not running from them. You learn to resist the urge to respond immediately because your peace matters more than being right. You start to observe people not for what they say, but for what they repeat, for what they hide, for what they fear. That awareness makes you strategic. It allows you to navigate complex situations without losing your balance. You begin to listen more than you speak. You start to see patterns where others see only problems. You don't need to match intensity with intensity. You become immune to provocation. That doesn't make you passive, it makes you lethal. Because while others are wasting energy fighting battles that don't matter, you're conserving yours for victories that do. You realize you don't need to clap back. You need to climb up. Your silence becomes strategy. Your presence becomes pressure, your composure becomes command, and no one quite knows how to deal with that because it's not taught in schools and it's not found in books. It's earned in solitude, sharpened by experience, and powered by discipline. So while others try to win through force, manipulation, or noise, you win by becoming untouchable, not physically, but mentally, spiritually, emotionally. You rise in such a way that nothing can shake the foundation you've built within. That is inner mastery, and from that space, you don't just survive the game, you rewrite the rules. Power doesn't always roar, it often whispers through calm. Emotional detachment is that quiet strength, the kind of power that doesn't flex, but dominates. It's the ability to remain grounded when the storm swirls, to think with clarity when others are drowning in reaction. Detachment isn't apathy. It's not numbness or indifference. It's the refusal to let your emotions control you or to be manipulated by those who weaponize theirs. When you're emotionally detached, you become the observer, not the victim. You step back and see things as they are, not as your feelings distort them to be. You don't get lost in drama. You don't take things personally. You stop expecting people to be who they're not. And when expectations dissolve, disappointment loses its grip on you. That's where freedom lives, where peace resides. You're no longer at the mercy of someone else's behavior, validation, or chaos. You've chosen to respond rather than react, and that's where all the leverage is. It's not about suppressing your emotions. It's about not letting them hijack your mind. You still feel, but you don't let those feelings dictate your decisions. That gap between emotion and reaction, that's power. That's where self-control thrives. That's where you outlast, outthink, and outmaneuver. Because when everyone else is triggered, you're still. When everyone else is crumbling under pressure, you're calculating your next move. Silence isn't your weakness. It's your weapon. Emotional detachment allows you to walk away without flinching. Not because you didn't care, but because you care more about your peace than winning a worthless battle. You no longer beg to be understood, heard, or accepted. You simply observe who aligns with your values and who doesn't, and if they don't, you let them go without resentment. That's the strength people can't comprehend, letting go without drama, without rage, without explaining yourself. It gives you the upper hand in every situation. Why? Because emotional chaos makes people predictable. When someone is emotionally reactive, they reveal their weaknesses, they expose their triggers, but when you're detached, you stay unreadable. You don't flinch when they expect you to break. You don't engage when they want to fight. You deny them the fuel they need to feed the fire. You stay poised, and in that stillness, they begin to unravel. There's something incredibly intimidating about someone who cannot be provoked. It disarms people. They don't know what to do with you. Their usual tactics don't work. You don't chase. You don't beg. You don't explode. You simply remove yourself, you distance, you protect your space, and in doing so, you show them that the only power they ever had was the power you gave them. Detachment also sharpens your judgment. You're no longer clouded by desperation, anxiety, or fear. You can assess situations, people, and intentions with clarity. You stop choosing out of loneliness. You stop staying out of guilt. You start making decisions rooted in reason, not emotion. You become surgical with your time, your attention, and your energy. You don't argue for the sake of being right. You don't stay to fix what doesn't want to be healed. You simply acknowledge reality and move accordingly. There is peace in emotional detachment, but more importantly, there is strategy. You become less reactive and more intentional. You don't fear losing people who aren't meant for your path. You don't get sucked into unnecessary battles. You understand that not everything deserves a response, and not every fire is yours to put out. Sometimes the most powerful move is no move at all. Sometimes walking away is the loudest message you can send. And you start to love that silence, the kind that doesn't come from ignoring the world, but from mastering your inner one. The world tries to teach you to fight louder, respond quicker, care harder. But emotional detachment teaches you something else. It teaches you to guard your energy like gold, to walk away like royalty, and to respond like a strategist, not a reactor. That's not weakness. That's elite-level strength. That's what power looks like when it's fully grown. Silence is often misunderstood. It's mistaken for weakness, for submission, for indecision. But those who truly understand its power know better. Silence isn't the absence of response. It's the most deliberate response of all. When used with purpose, silence can cut sharper than any word ever could. It disorients, confuses, humbles, it forces reflection, it exposes truth. In the right hands, silence is not passive, it's powerful. Strategic, lethal, people expect reactions, they expect noise, they expect validation, confrontation, defense. That's the game they're used to playing. But when you choose silence, you flip the script. You deny them the chaos they crave. You don't show your hand. You don't feed their ego or their anger. You hold your ground with stillness, and suddenly they're left with their own noise. That's when things get interesting, because silence makes people listen not to you, but to themselves. It reflects their energy right back at them. Silence makes you unpredictable. In a world where everyone overshares, overreacts, and overexplains, the one who stays quiet becomes the one everyone watches. You create an energy that speaks louder than shouting ever could. You take back control of the room without lifting a finger. Silence doesn't mean you have nothing to say. It means you've chosen not to say it. It means your presence speaks for you, and your restraint becomes a language of its own. There's nothing more unsettling to someone trying to provoke you than your silence. They want you to react, to break, to respond emotionally. They feed on your attention, your energy, your time, but when you go quiet, when you give nothing, that's when they lose control. Your silence becomes their discomfort. Your stillness becomes their mirror. And more often than not, that mirror is what they fear the most. Silence gives you power over your own emotions. It teaches you to observe, to think, to wait. You don't rush to reply. You calculate. You analyze the situation without the haze of anger or ego. You decide if it's even worth your response. Most times it isn't. Most battles aren't about justice. They're about ego. Most arguments aren't about truth. They're about control. Silence removes you from that trap. It lets you rise above the noise without ever entering it. There is wisdom in knowing that not every situation deserves your voice. Not every insult needs to be addressed. Not every lie needs to be corrected. Sometimes the best way to destroy a false narrative is to never feed it. Sometimes the most powerful response to disrespect is complete detachment, no attention, no explanation, just silence and distance. Because silence doesn't only end conversations, it ends patterns. It says, I'm not playing this game anymore. I've evolved. The strongest people are not those who scream the loudest. They're the ones who know when to hold back. They understand that real strength is not in proving a point, it's in not needing to. It's in letting go of the need to be right in order to protect your peace. It's in walking away with your dignity intact while others drown in their own noise. Silence is also a form of protection. It shields your thoughts, your energy, your boundaries. It creates space for clarity. In that space, you learn, you reflect, you grow. You become harder to manipulate because you're no longer reacting to every trigger. You become harder to read because you've stopped revealing your inner world. People can't play with what they don't understand, and they can't manipulate what they can't access. Most importantly, silence teaches discipline. It forces you to sit with discomfort, to resist the urge to lash out, to process your pain without projecting it. That's where emotional maturity is born, in the quiet moments. That's where you realize that not every response needs to be loud to be effective. Sometimes the quietest ones echo the longest. Sometimes silence isn't empty. It's full of intention. When you learn to use silence as a weapon, you don't just protect your energy, you elevate it. You stop speaking to be heard and start listening to understand. You choose peace without seeking permission, and in that silence you become untouchable. Not because you've run from conflict, but because you've mastered how to rise above it, and that mastery, that's what makes your silence louder than words will ever be. You don't need to say much when you are much. Real presence speaks long before the first word ever leaves your mouth. It's in how you carry yourself, how you enter a room, how you make people feel without trying. When your presence is powerful, you don't need to announce it. You don't need to prove yourself, defend your worth, or chase recognition. People just know. They feel it in your energy, in your focus, in the silence between your sentences. Presence, when cultivated from within, does all the talking for you. There's something magnetic about a person who doesn't chase attention but commands respect. They don't beg to be seen, they are seen. They don't dominate conversations. They listen, observe, absorb, and when they speak, it lands, not because it's loud, but because it's real. You can feel the weight of someone's experience, resilience, and self-respect without them ever bragging about it. That's what presence is. It's not volume, it's vibration. When your presence is louder than your words, you've stepped into a space of quiet authority, the kind that doesn't need validation because it comes from inner knowing. You understand that being powerful doesn't mean being aggressive. It means being intentional. You walk with clarity, not confusion, with purpose, not performance. You don't react. You respond. You don't explain. You execute. Your very stillness speaks. I know who I am. I know what I carry, and I don't need to convince you of any of it. It's not about being stoic or robotic. It's about alignment. When your energy aligns with your values, your actions, and your confidence, it creates a gravity around you. People notice when you walk in, not because you're trying to be noticed, but because your energy is focused, grounded, unshakable. You don't need to speak to control a room. You are the control. You walk in with presence, not permission. You don't seek the light. You carry it. Think about the people who have impacted you most in your life. Not the loud ones, not the boastful ones. The ones whose calm was louder than chaos. The ones who didn't need to tell you who they were. You just felt it. Their gaze, their posture, their intentional silence, all of it spoke. That's the power of presence. It's in the restraint. It's in the self-awareness. It's in the decision to let your character speak louder than your ego ever could. When you develop a strong presence, it becomes your armor. You're not easily swayed by external noise because you've built something unshakable internally. You don't have to participate in every argument, respond to every insult, or explain yourself to every doubter. Your presence answers the questions your words never need to. Your consistency proves what your voice doesn't have to defend. Your discipline does the talking for you. That's when you stop performing and start being. Presence also brings clarity to others. It shows them how to treat you without ever laying out the rules. Your boundaries are felt, not just spoken. Your respect is demanded, not requested. And if someone crosses a line, you don't need to shout. You simply withdraw. You don't threaten, you move. Your silence becomes your message, and your absence becomes the lesson. That's what happens when your presence carries more weight than anything you could ever say. You become the type of person who doesn't need attention because you already have your own. You're not insecurely trying to be seen or heard. You know yourself, and that knowing is more powerful than any loud introduction. People start to recognize that you're not moved by pressure. You're not driven by drama. You don't fall apart under judgment. You're composed, focused, and prepared. That's intimidating, not in an aggressive way, but in a way that commands respect. Your energy introduces you before you do. It enters the room with your posture, your eye contact, your stillness, and it lingers long after you've left. That's the legacy of presence, not in what you said, but in what you stood for, not in how many words you used, but in how those around you felt them. Because at the end of the day, words are forgotten, but presence, that's what stays, that's what speaks, that's what wins. There is a rare kind of peace that comes when you decide to no longer be available to chaos. It's not about isolation, it's about elevation. It's the quiet decision to remove your energy from anything that disturbs your clarity, confuses your mind, or pulls you into noise that doesn't belong to you. Chaos is seductive. It wants you reactive, emotional, impulsive. It wants you tangled in drama, fighting invisible wars, defending your name to people who were never listening. But when you become unavailable to chaos, you become untouchable. Not because you've escaped life, but because you've mastered how to live above what drains you. Being unavailable to chaos doesn't mean you're heartless. It means your peace has become sacred. You stop answering to everything that calls your name. You no longer feel obligated to fix what you didn't break, to carry emotions that aren't yours, or to respond to every invitation to dysfunction. You grow tired of circular conversations, reactive people, and emotionally immature patterns. You begin to recognize that not everything deserves your energy, and not everyone deserves access to you. That's not cruelty, that's clarity. You start to pull back, not out of fear, but out of wisdom. You begin to understand that your mental space is prime real estate, and not everyone should be allowed to rent space there. You stop entertaining arguments that go nowhere. You stop responding to attacks designed to bait you into character assassination. You walk away more, you breathe deeper, you stay centered when the world expects you to break. That confuses people who are used to seeing you bend, but you're no longer available to bend for chaos. You've outgrown that version of yourself. People may call it arrogance, but you'll know it's discipline. Discipline to protect your inner world, discipline to say no without guilt, discipline to detach when needed, even if it makes others uncomfortable. Because when you've tasted peace, chaos becomes intolerable. You can't unlearn calm once you've truly embraced it. You become addicted to stillness. You start prioritizing your peace over being understood, over being liked, over being right, and suddenly everything shifts. You stop reacting to petty attacks. You stop over-explaining yourself. You stop chasing clarity from people committed to misunderstanding you. Your silence becomes your sanctuary. Your distance becomes your declaration. You're no longer trying to win anyone's approval because you've realized that your worth isn't up for debate. You stop proving, defending, fixing. You start observing, protecting, and choosing wisely. Chaos thrives on urgency, on panic, on confusion. But when you're grounded, none of that moves you. You become slow to respond, fast to leave. You no longer let people's projections define your peace. If someone's energy doesn't feel safe or consistent, you create space. Not because you hate them, but because you love yourself. You love your calm, your focus, your goals. And you realize that anything constantly disturbing that is not meant for you, no matter how familiar it feels. You choose who and what gets your energy. You stop showing up to every emotional fire. You stop volunteering to be the hero in stories that weren't yours to begin with. You let people solve their own storms while you protect your sky. Not from a place of coldness, but from strength, because you finally understand not everything is your assignment. You start to live by different rules. You let peace become your filter. If it costs your peace, it's too expensive. If it brings confusion, it's not aligned. If it feels forced, it's not for you. You trust your instincts. You let your nervous system be the guide. If something makes you tense, you don't argue with it. You distance yourself from it. You don't chase closure. You don't fight to stay where you're no longer respected. You simply leave quietly, completely. When you become unavailable to chaos, you become magnetic to peace, to clarity. To people who speak with intention, move with grace, and value your time, your boundaries sharpen, your focus intensifies. Your life begins to make room for things that nourish you instead of drain you. You stop surviving and start thriving because chaos no longer has a seat at your table. You've made space for what matters and let go of everything that doesn't. Keep evolving, no matter who doubts you, misunderstands you, or tries to hold you to a version of yourself you've long outgrown. Growth is uncomfortable. It requires shedding skin, breaking cycles, letting go of comfort, and walking into the unknown without a map. But if you want to rise, if you want to become the person you're capable of being, evolution is not optional, it's necessary. You can't stay rooted in old habits and expect a new life to blossom. You can't repeat the same choices and hope for a different future. You have to stretch, you have to risk, you have to change. Evolution doesn't always look dramatic. Sometimes it's quiet. It's the decision to respond with grace instead of anger. It's taking a breath instead of reacting. It's waking up early to protect your peace. It's deleting a contact, walking away from a dead-end conversation, or choosing solitude over noise. It's not about proving your growth to anyone. It's about living in a way that proves it to yourself. Every small choice builds the next version of you. Every boundary you enforce becomes a brick in the foundation of your evolution. People will try to keep you where they met you. They'll say, "You've changed," like it's a crime. They'll remember your mistakes louder than your progress, but that's not your burden. You don't have to explain your transformation to anyone still committed to misunderstanding you. Let them talk. Let them stay stuck in stories you've already outlived. You're not here to make sense to people who never wanted you to grow in the first place. You're here to rise. You're here to evolve. You're here to become someone your past self would be proud of and your future self would be thankful for. Keep evolving even when it feels like no one's watching, even when the results are slow, even when it feels like you're losing people, losing comfort, losing familiarity. Because what you're gaining is far more valuable. You're gaining strength. You're gaining wisdom. You're gaining the kind of peace that only comes when you stop being who the world expects and start being who you were designed to be. The path won't always be clear. You'll stumble, doubt, and fall, but each time you rise stronger. Each time you get back up, you're less like who you were and more like who you're meant to be. There will be moments when you feel like quitting, when growth feels like isolation, when healing feels like breaking, when your elevation feels more like a burden than a blessing. But keep going. That resistance is the proof that you're moving forward. Growth isn't glamorous. It's raw, painful, and often lonely, but it's also beautiful, freeing, and deeply worth it. It's in those quiet moments of perseverance that the most powerful transformation happens. Not when you arrive, but when you keep showing up even when the journey feels thankless. Your evolution is not a straight line. You'll have setbacks, you'll revisit old wounds, you'll make choices that look like mistakes, but were actually lessons in disguise. Don't shame yourself for needing time. Don't rush your healing. Don't compare your progress to someone else's highlight reel. Your path is yours alone. Own it, honor it, evolve at your own pace, but never stop evolving. Because the second you stop growing, you start shrinking into someone you've already outgrown. Let your evolution speak for you, not through words, but through presence, through how you carry yourself, through how you no longer engage in drama, how you protect your peace, how you love yourself enough to walk away from anything that diminishes your light. Let your evolution be the quiet revolution that shifts everything. The energy that enters rooms before you do, the calm that replaces chaos, the clarity that cuts through confusion. Keep evolving not to impress, but to express the highest version of yourself, the version that forgives without allowing repeated harm. The version that loves deeply without losing self-respect, the version that moves through life with intention, purpose, and quiet confidence. You're not here to stay the same, you're not here to fit in. You're here to grow, to learn, to expand, to become wiser, calmer, stronger. So take the hits, embrace the discomfort, trust the process, because every step you take, no matter how small, is a step forward. Keep evolving, keep becoming, keep rising.